Harold Shipman is the most prolific serial killer in UK history and one of the most prolific of all time, with an estimated 250 victims spanning over 20 years. On the surface, Shipman was a trusted doctor, but underneath this unassuming disguise was a monstrous murderer actively betraying his patients. Welcome to Infamous Episodes. This is the story of Dr. Death, Harold Shipman. Harold Shipman was born on January 14, 1946, in Nottingham, England. Shipman was the second of 4 children in a working-class family. His father, also named Harold Frederick Shipman, was a lorry driver, and his mother was Vera Britton. Shipman had a particularly close relationship with his mother, who was a dominant presence in his life, and this bond was a defining aspect of his early years. However, Shipman's mum would later get lung cancer when he was 17, and during her illness, Shipman witnessed his mother receiving morphine injections to alleviate her pain. This was something that ignited his interest in medicine and would prove to be a key event in the inspiration for his crimes, but we'll get onto that later. Academically, Shipman was a pretty bright student. He excelled at High Pavement Grammar School, which was quite a good school that wasn't easy to get into, and he showed considerable talent in sports, particularly long-distance running and rugby. These early years laid the groundwork for his future medical career, and he would later go on to study medicine at Leeds School of Medicine, graduating in 1970. Despite this seemingly normal upbringing, Shipman's childhood was marked by the profound impact of his mother's illness and death, which really hit him hard. Despite this, his later life saw him becoming a respected member of the medical community, only to betray that trust in the most severe manner imaginable, leading to his eventual identification as one of the most prolific serial killers ever known. Shipman's early career in medicine was characterized by both professional progress and troubling behavior that foreshadowed his later criminal activities. After his graduation in 1970, Shipman began his medical career at Pontefract General Infirmary in Pontefract, Yorkshire. His initial years in the medical profession were pretty normal, and his days would comprise of routine duties typical of a new physician. However, Shipman's career took a concerning turn in 1975 when he moved to a practice in Todmorden, West Yorkshire. It was here that Shipman's issues with drug abuse first came to light. He was caught forging prescriptions for pethidine, an opiate to which he had become addicted. This serious professional misconduct resulted in Shipman being fined £600, and subsequently he had to attend a drug rehabilitation clinic in New York. However, he wasn't struck off, and despite this setback, he resumed his medical career. In 1977, he started working as general practitioner at the Donnybrook Medical Centre. Throughout the 1980s, he continued his practice in Hyde and established his own surgery at 21 Market Street in 1993. During this period, Shipman became a respected member of the community, a stark contrast to his later notorious reputation. This all paints a complex picture. On the one hand, you've got a seemingly competent and trusted medical practitioner, and on the other, a so-called medical professional struggling with substance abuse and engaging in fraudulent behaviour. He also lived a relatively private life. Shipman was married to Primrose Oxtoby, with whom he had 4 children, and there is no indication that any of them had any idea of his crimes. Shipman is believed to have begun killing his patients as early as 1975, only a few years after he graduated. His modus operandi involved administering his patients lethal doses of diamorphine, which is a form of heroin used for pain control in terminal cancer patients. He would then falsify the medical records and death certificates to cover this up, often attributing the cause of death to natural causes or existing health conditions, and he got away with it for 23 years because Shipman was smart. He carefully chose his victims, who were predominantly elderly women, often with health issues. It was conceivable that these patients were dying for the reasons he said they were, which is why he got away with it for so long. The exact number of Shipman's victims is unknown, but an official inquiry estimated that he killed about 250 patients over this 23-year period between 1975 and 1998. However, everything must come to an end eventually, and Shipman's campaign of murder was no exception. In March 1998, Dr. Linda Reynolds expressed concerns about the high death rate among Shipman's patients. In particular, she was concerned about the large number of cremation forms for elderly women that he had asked to have countersigned. At the time, police were unable to find sufficient evidence to bring charges, and they closed the investigation on the 17th of April. If only they'd been able to charge him then, as he managed to kill 3 more people before finally being apprehended, and the Shipman inquiry later blamed Greater Manchester Police for assigning inexperienced officers to the case, but we'll get onto that later. A few months later, in August, taxi driver John Shaw told the police that he suspected Shipman of murdering 21 patients. Shaw became suspicious as many of the elderly customers he took to hospital, while seemingly in good health, died in Shipman's care. 21 patients is far too many to be a coincidence, surely. Shipman's final victim was Kathleen Grundy, a former mayor of Hyde who was found dead at her home on the 24th of June 1998. Shipman was the last person to have seen her alive. He later signed her death certificate, recording the cause of death as old age. Grundy's daughter, solicitor Angela Woodruff, became concerned when fellow solicitor Brian Burgess informed her that a will had been made, apparently by her mother, with doubts about its authenticity. The will excluded Woodruff and her children, but left £386,000 to Shipman. Woodruff went to the police, who began another investigation. Grundy's body was exhumed and found to contain traces of diamorphine, but as if killing her and trying to take her entire estate away from her children and grandchildren wasn't enough, Shipman attempted to disgrace her after her death by claiming that Grundy had been an addict. He even showed the police comments that he had written to that effect in his computerized medical journal, completely unaware that when police would examine the computer, it would show that the entries were written after the date of her death. Ultimately, Shipman was arrested on the 7th of September 1998 and was found to own a Brother typewriter, the exact same type that was used to make the forged will. Prescription for Murder, a 2000 book by journalists Brian Whittle and Gene Ritchie, suggested that Shipman forged a will either because he wanted to be caught, because his life was out of control, or because he planned to retire at 55 and leave the UK. The police investigated other deaths that Shipman had certified and investigated 15 specimen cases. They discovered a familiar pattern: administering lethal doses of diamorphine and signing the patient's death certificate. But why did he do this? What was the purpose of all of these killings? Well, Shipman's motive remains unclear to this day, and has unsurprisingly been the subject of much speculation. Some theories suggest a psychological compulsion stemming from the experience of seeing the pain relief his mother experienced during her illness when she received morphine. Others suggest a God complex, which is the idea that somebody enjoys having power over somebody else's life or death. A doctor with a God complex is a recipe for disaster. Financial gain? Well, possibly in the case of Kathleen Grundy, but what he did with her will was an outlier, and he didn't really stand to benefit financially from his other crimes. Ultimately, throughout his trial and the subsequent imprisonment, Shipman never admitted guilt and always maintained his innocence, so we never really got a true insight into the motives of the most prolific serial killer in modern times. As you'd expect, Shipman's trial, which commenced at Preston Crown Court on October 5, 1999, was a very big deal due to the nature and scale of his crimes. Shipman faced 15 counts of murder and 1 count of forgery. The prosecution's case was built on demonstrating Shipman's pattern of killing his patients using lethal doses of diamorphine. They refuted any claims of compassionate motives, as none of his victims were suffering from terminal illnesses. Throughout the trial, Shipman maintained an arrogant demeanour, which, along with his inconsistent stories, did not endear him to the jury. This was consistent with his demeanour during police interrogations, as he showed no remorse when presented with photos of his victims, often turning his back or closing his eyes, indicating a complete refusal to engage and a total lack of empathy. After a meticulous summation by the judge and 6 days of deliberation, the jury unanimously found Shipman guilty of all charges on January 31st, 2000. The judge sentenced him to 15 life sentences and a 4-year sentence for forgery, which was commuted to a whole life sentence, effectively ensuring no possibility of parole, so Shipman would die in prison. And he did die in prison, but only having served 4 years, as in 2004 he was found hanging in his cell, having taken his own life the day before his 58th birthday. Shipman's death was felt by relatives of his victims as a kick in the teeth. For them, instead of having to live out the rest of his days behind bars, they felt he was able to take the easy way out. This felt like a denial of justice, particularly as Shipman never admitted guilt nor provided any explanations for why he did what he did. Unexpectedly, Shipman's crimes led to a significant loss in trust in the medical profession and resulted in changes to the regulation and monitoring of medical practitioners in the UK. It raised serious questions about the ease with which Shipman falsified death certificates and the lack of oversight that allowed his crimes to go undetected for so long. The Shipman inquiry, which was chaired by Dame Janet Smith, was established to investigate the broader issues raised by Shipman's crimes, including the procedures around death certification and investigation. The inquiry, submitted in July 2002, concluded that he had killed at least 218 of his patients, and the estimated true number is likely 250. His wife and 4 children all obtained new identities after the trial and have been able to live new lives. Thanks for watching. Let us know your thoughts about Shipman's crimes in the comments below. We'd love to continue continue the discussion. For more information, I have included links to further reading in the video description. Please remember to like the video, subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to ensure you never miss a video. We're posting short content every day and long content like this every week, so stay tuned.